Game On by Opening My Eyes. Summary. You're a player, so let's play a game. Let's sweet talk, let's play fight, let's talk 24/7, let's tell each other good morning and good night every day. Let's take walks together, let's give each other nicknames, let's hang out with each other's friends. Let's go on dates, let's talk on the phone all night long. Let's hold each other, let's kiss and hug, and whoever falls in love first loses. Chapter 1. Will didn't consider himself a hateful person. Quite the opposite, actually. It was his own personal rule to be a warm and welcoming presence in the lives of his loved ones. He always had a smile ready for young and old alike, and on occasion was even teased by his friends because he was too nice for his own good. But like all rules, this one had an exception. This particular exception happened to come in a cute Italian package, but don't let that fool you, no. Will would teach caution to all who considered existing in close proximity to one Nico D'Angelo. The first time Will had ever met Nico, well, he didn't think he would ever forget it. The first day back at school last year had been a warm September day. The summer had lingered. Will had been informed for the school that morning that he was a member of the student council. He was required to show the new students around the school. Will had been pretty excited. This wasn't the first new student he had shown the ropes to, but it was the first who was the same age as him, and who didn't get excited at the thought of a potential friend. Will had opened the door to the office, greeting already leaving his lips. Morning, Sue. Ah, Will. Perfect, you're just on time. This is Nico D'Angelo. Nico, this is Will Solis. He'll show you around today. You're in good hands. Will knows the school better than anyone. It was true. Will's mother was the principal of the school, so Will had spent a lot of time there growing up. Will thought he heard Nico mumble something under his breath, but he let it pass, instead seizing the moment to take in the boy in front of him. His hair was black as night, and Will had to laugh now, thinking back. He'd wanted to run his fingers through it, see what those cute curls would feel like twisted around his fingers. A tattered black school bag was slung over one of his shoulders, donned in what Will knew now as his trademark leather jacket. His ripped, skinny jeans looked so tight, Will figured they must have been painted on, and once, just once, Nico flicked his hair out of his eyes, and Will caught a glimpse of the dark, swirling brown irises. Okay, so if you want to come with me, I can show you to your locker and your classes too if you want. Yay, a dose of overbearing prep boy every hour. Can't wait. Nico muttered, and Will felt his shoulders stiffen, but decided to let the comment pass. First days could be hard on people. Nico trailed after Will, following him down the winding halls, answering exactly none of Will's questions. Will rolled his eyes now as he recalled how, after all that, he had still tried to give the guy a chance. Will met Nico at the door of his classroom when the bell went for lunch. The cafeteria is just down here, he said a little redundantly, as they could both see the doors of the cafeteria flung open to reveal the multitude of students already eating in there. Okay, well, this is it. You can sit with my friends and I if you'd like. They won't mind. Then Will had never forgotten what had happened next. Nico had looked him up and down at his Converse, blue jeans, and light jumper before huffing a laugh. Yeah, I don't think so. He rejected and just walked away. Will sighed, rolling his eyes as he walked through the gates, annoyed at himself for getting lost in his thoughts when he should be taking everything in. This would be his last ever first day back at high school, and he was damned if he was going to miss any bit because he was too caught up thinking about that heathen in the making. Well, before he could do anything, a smaller female frame launched herself onto him. Hey, Lou, he laughed as he wrapped his arms around her waist. Oh my gosh, I missed you, she cried, unwinding her arms from where they'd been clasped around his neck and taking a minuscule step backwards so that now he could actually see her. You just saw me on Friday, he replied, raising an eyebrow and beginning to start walking once more. That was a full 3 days ago. Plus, it was some holidays, not in school. It's just not the same, she groaned dramatically, dragging out the last syllable. God, Luke, you are so dramatic. What do you expect from a theatre nerd? I'm a theatre nerd and I can control myself, Will protested. Ah, yes, but you're the anomaly. Cecile said, falling into step with the pair as if it were a movie. Hey! Will cried, but was drowned out by Lou's exhale of delight as she flung herself into her boyfriend's arm. Cecile let out a small oomph on impact, but his arms wrapped around her waist immediately. You guys, chill. We get it. You're in a relationship. Stop flaunting it in front of us single people, Wood joked as they walked under the stone arch, past the large wooden doors. Well, you're one of the hottest eligible boys in a year. You could totally have a relationship if you wanted it. People ask you out every 5 minutes, but you turn them all down. It's not our fault that you don't think anyone's good enough. Will groaned, tilting his head back, trying to find the words to explain the situation to his friends again. It's not that they're not good enough, it's just never feels right, you know? I've never looked at any of the people who've asked me out in that way. They reached Will's lockers, and Will leaned against his as Llewellyn turned to face him, focusing his a look with her serious face. Well, that's the point of dates, to try to look at a person in that way. You never know. You might even find you end up actually liking one of these people. Will sighed as he opened his locker. It was stiff, so he had to give it a good tug, and when it finally did swing open, the hinges screamed in protest. Yeah, maybe, he replied, a little unconvincingly. If that's not working, Cecile suggested, you could try asking someone else. Then at least you'll know if you could have feelings for them. I guess I could try that, Will conceded, and the pair grinned conspiratorially. Okay, well, we're off to find our lockers, Llewellyn said in farewell as she crossed the corridor and Cecile rounded the corner. Will started transferring books from his bag into his locker, sighing in relief as the heavy weight on his shoulders was lightened. He hurried more than saw the locker on the other side of him open as the person behind him began doing the same. He couldn't see who it was. The door of his locker was blocking then, but beneath it he could see a battered pair of dark Converse under black skinny jeans. Will's stomach began knotting unpleasantly as he began chanting in his head as his locker squeaked close. Please don't be him, please don't be. He was none other than notorious Nico D'Angelo. The Italian boy tilted his head slightly to see who was beside him, his lip curling, eyes scowling when he saw who it was. Before Will could say or do anything, Nico spun on his heel and began walking away. Will heard the ghost of a muttered, "Pan-fucking-tastic," before Nico rounded the corner at the end of the corridor and vanished from view. Well, that went well, Will mumbled to himself before picking up his bag and heading off to his first class before the bell rang. The classes of the day were typical of those of a first day back, light and entertaining if a little uneventful. There were one or two new teachers who had tried to come up with a few fun games to try to learn everyone's names, or rolled his eyes originally, but when in maths he saw Nico scoff, he became determined to participate as much as possible. English was particularly entertaining. Will had always loved his English teacher, Mr. Blowfus. He just had a way with teenagers that made them actually want to interact with him, not roll their eyes and walk out of the class calling him totally lame. He had gone around the room asking everyone what books they had read over the summer, performing hilarious impromptu scenes from those works he knew, and scribbling down the titles of those he didn't in his little notebook so he could keep up with the kids. The fact that Mr. Blowfus was Percy Jackson's stepdad was common knowledge in the school. Lots of things about Percy were common knowledge, him being the most popular guy in the school and all. Bill didn't know him all that well. Percy was a year older than him, but he had spoken to him once or twice, and he seemed like a genuinely decent dude. Will knew Annabeth Chase, Percy's girlfriend, a little better, and while she seemed his intellectual opposite, there wasn't a person in the school who could claim there was a better couple. Then, of course, there were all of Percy's friends, including Jason Grace, Piper McLean, Frank Jean, Hazel Levesque, and Leo Valdez. All kind-hearted, warm people, which is why the entire school was in shock when Nico D'Angelo sat down at their table at lunch on his first day as if he had known them all his life. People later discovered Nico was cousins to both Jason and Percy, which explained how he knew them. Not only that, but Hazel was his sister. Well, half sister technically, but still. Everyone was more than a little shocked. Hazel was one of the most doted on people in the school. You just couldn't help but love her. Rumors died down then, but Will still kept thinking about how Nico, the bane of his existence, seemed to slot into their lovely little group so seamlessly. It would be one thing if the others just seemed to tolerate Nico's presence. He was family after all, but that wasn't the case. They all seemed like genuine friends. Will could never wrap his head around it. Will joined up with Lou and Cecile as they made their way out of their last class into their lockers. The pair was still laughing at some joke Will missed, lost in his own thoughts. Lou and Will stopped and waited as Cecile flung a few books carelessly into his locker. At that rate, your books are going to be falling apart by next week, Will teased and laughed at the dirty looks Cecile threw him. Come on, Lou whined, as they trudged slowly through the heavy crowds of teenagers. I want to get out of this place already. It's literally the first day back, Cecile deadpanned. Are you saying you want to stay here? Llewellyn retorted, eyebrow quirked. Cecile's shoulders slumped in defeat. I suppose not. Okay, I'll go to my locker. You can go to Lou's, then let's meet at the gates in 5? Will proposed. They nodded in agreement and split up. Will sped up a little now he was alone and wove in and out of the many bodies surrounding him. He smiled apologetically at the people he bumped into and at the people who bumped into him, before coming to a complete standstill. For standing, or should I say leaning, right up against Will's locker, completely blocking any and all access, was Nico D'Angelo himself. And he was not alone. No, D'Angelo had some nameless guy Will didn't know pressed up against the locker as they kissed frantically. Nico's hands were flat against the locker beside the other guy's head, and his hands were running up and down Nico's back. Will stood there for a minute or two, just trying to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. He didn't know if he should interrupt. I mean, he was already on D'Angelo's bad side, but at the same time, he needed to get to his locker. Lou and Cecile were waiting for him, and he was definitely late at this point. The pair broke away before Will could make up his mind, Nico noting Will's presence. What are you looking at? He sneered. Nothing pleasant, Will assured him. You're blocking my locker. Out of the corner of his eye, Will saw the nameless guy slip wordlessly into the lesson crowd. Nico didn't even seem to notice as he made the two minuscule steps it took to go from Will's locker to his own. I'd say I was sorry, but that'd be a lie. Nico threw him a mocking smirk. Nico threw with a mocking smirk on his face before stepping backwards into the corridor. Now near the deserted and spun on his heel as he made his way out of the door. Will shoved his books in his locker, filled with a burning rage. The cheek of that boy! Will could still see him, his long, slender fingers pressed against the cool metal of the locker, his sharp jawline on display as he tilted his head this way and that. Will bet Nico didn't even know the name of the guy he was kissing. Will didn't even know his name, and Will knew a lot of people. Maybe he was new. Will slammed his locker shut and headed out the door, taking deep breaths of the rapidly cooling air. Lou and Cecile were waiting at the gate as promised, their expressions a weird mix of annoyance and concern. Where were you? Lou questioned at the same time as Cecile called. What took you so long? Will sighed, adjusting the strap of his backpack as they all fell into step alongside each other. Lou on Will's left, Cecile on his right. You will never believe what just happened. Will opened before launching into a story. His friends were surprised, but not as much as Will thought they would have been. Certainly not as surprised as Will himself was. I thought you'd both be more shocked, he said. It was a statement, but he said it as a question. Lou shrugged beside him. I mean, he could stand to move over a couple feet, but it's high school. This kind of thing happens all the time. Yeah, Cecile agreed, chiming in. And D'Angelo's hot, like seriously good looking. If anyone could find someone to make out with him on the first day back, It would be him. Will sighed. Yeah, I suppose. Just forget about it, Llewellyn encouraged. It was probably just a one-time thing. You're right, Will agreed, more confidence flooding his voice. A one-time thing. I can live with that. That's my boy, Cecile affirmed, slapping Will on the shoulder. They all stopped as they reached Will's house. They all grew up on the same street. This was how they all met and became fast friends. Will's house was first. Llewellyn's was 3 doors down, and Cecile's was across the street. Will smiled at Will smiled at his friends in appreciation. Thanks, guys. See you in the morning. 7 a.m. on the dot, right here. They both chimed, and Will waved one last farewell before retreating into his house, throwing his bag down on the front door and flopping immediately onto the couch. What a day! It was not a one-time thing. In fact, it had become quite a regular occurrence. At least once a day, Will would arrive at his locker, and there Nico would be, and with a different person every time, Will might add. At first, Will would be flustered. He progressed from just standing, watching like some kind of pervert to quietly mumbling, "Excuse me?" Getting gradually louder the more annoyed he got. Then came the day he was running late for chemistry. "Oh, for fuck's sake, get out of the way!" he had cried as he shoved the pair sideways. The moment he'd done it, he regretted it. He waited for Nico to turn to him, pure hatred in those dark eyes, but nothing. Nico didn't even look at him. Will only caught the slight hint of a smirk on Nico's lips as he shut his locker and began his sprint for the chemistry lab. Miss Martinez was not a teacher whose class you wanted to be late for. Since that day, Will's responses became less nervous and more blasé. It was an everyday occurrence for him, after all. One time he had just tapped the nameless guy's shoulder and smiled, a fake smile, as the poor guy blushed and ran off, leaving Nico glaring at Will through the door of his now open locker. Another time, Will had thrown a condom on them. A condom he had explicitly gone out and purchased the day before, for just this reason. One of Will's personal favourites had been when he had walked down the hallway blowing an air horn. It had subsequently been confiscated by a teacher, but it was totally worth it just to have seen Nico's reaction. Just yesterday, Will had leaned beside them before either of the boys had noticed and drawled, I should really start recording these little sessions of yours. I could make a fortune on the internet." Nico's makeup partner had squeaked and ran away, but Nico had only leaned against his own locker, looking Will in the eye. "Perhaps, but I could sue your ass off. I am under 18. Will sighed. Pity. He had then proceeded to open his locker and go about the reason he had gone there in the first place. Today, Will had another prop in hand. He was a little nervous about this one. It was bolder than his usual interruptions, but mostly he was just looking forward to seeing the look on Nico's face. There was no sign of anything PG-13 going on before lunch. That didn't worry Will. It was rare that even Nico could seduce someone that fast. It was weird, however, when there was no sign of anyone after lunch. That was Nico's favorite time to be an absolute inconvenience in Will's life. Will was even starting to wonder, would this be the first day in which Nico wouldn't find someone? He was almost a little worried when he was leaving his last class of the day. It would be a shame if he never got to use his score. There he was, Nico D'Angelo in all his glory, pressing God only knows who against Will's locker. Grinning perhaps a little sadistically, Will took the spray bottle out of the side pocket of his bag, where he had kept it all day, ready at a moment's notice. Will had filled it with water just that morning, and took delight in marching up to the boys and spraying it liberally over the pair. Break it up, he called, his tone not unlike that of the teacher trying to defuse a little fight. Nico's partner gasped and spluttered at the cold water suddenly raining down on him, and rushed off to dry off. Nico, on the other hand, shook his hair like a dog and turned to Will, eyeing him up and down. Will would be lying if he said he wasn't aware of every single inch of his body Nico's eyes fell on. "What's your problem?" Will scoffed. "My problem? If you just moved over a few inches, there would be no problem. You seem to like blocking my locker. That's the problem. Nico just brushed off Will's perfectly logical answer. Nah, that's not it. What? Will sputtered. Yes, it is. What else would it be? Nico leaned one shoulder against the locker, so he was fully facing Will. A rivulet of water ran from his wet hair down his face, over his cheekbone, and down to the curve of his jaw. Will had to force himself to look away when he realized he was staring. I think you're jealous, Nico drawled, and Will jerked back. Jealous? He squeaked. You think I'm jealous of you? Yep, Nico said plainly, popping the pea, looking like he was getting a fair amount of entertainment from Will's shock. Why on earth would I be jealous of you? Will ground out. Because, Nico replied casually as he turned to lean his back against the metal, his head tilted up, exposing that damp jawline. You have to see me here every day, with someone new, when you can't get anyone. Will couldn't stop the huff of disbelief that escaped him. Sure, he agreed sarcastically. I could get someone whenever I want. You're really the one jealous of me. I'm willing to wait for the right relationship. You, on the other hand, you're so afraid of falling in love. You have a new person every day. How long until you've gone out with every boy in the school? Will saw Nico's jaw clench. I'm not afraid of love. I could date someone if I wanted. An idea sparked in Will's mind. He grinned slowly. Fine. Then I have a proposition for you. Nico turned to face him once more. I'm listening, he purred. You're a player, Will began. So let's play a game. Let's sweet talk. Let's play fight. Let's talk 24/7. Let's tell each other good morning and good night every day. Let's take walks together. Let's give each other nicknames. Let's hang out with each other's friends. Let's go on dates. Let's talk on the phone all night long. Let's hold each other. Let's kiss and hug. And whoever falls in love first loses. Nico looked at him for a long moment. Will held his breath. He had never done something so bold in his life. He could feel his heart racing in his chest. He could hear the rush of blood in his ears. What do I get when I win? Nico asked finally. When I win, Will countered. I can decide then. It could be anything. Anything? Nico asked, raising an eyebrow. Anything, Will confirmed. You are so going down, Solace, Nico muttered inside. Will beamed. Fun. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 1. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I realized I haven't done much Solangelo stuff in a while, and I was like, I actually miss it. So you probably saw the community post about how I was looking for recommendations. Then I realized I have a backlog on TikTok of saved fic recs, and I was like, I just go through there until I found something that looked interesting. I have not drank enough water today, and you could probably tell because my voice cut out at like the 10,000 word, no, the 10-minute mark. It was really funny. I was like, oh god, my voice just cut out. But yeah, this one has 11 chapters, so make sure to go give the author kudos. Check the links in the description for everything. I always have it in the. I always have the links to everything because the only thing I'm doing is reading. So yeah. I think that's all. Tell me what you guys think. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.